you know it all already.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, might have to field some answers to the likes of Seth and Caroline. You don't mind, do you? Everybody's joining thick and fast. I hope for everybody joining, they've had a good summer break if you've been away or you're about to go away before summer finally finishes with rain forecast for next week. Up to about 40, which is good. Ooh, get more. So, Amate, do you want to remind people of what Slido they should be submitting their questions to on?
Yes, that's right. So as I'm sure people will be very familiar with, we're using MHHS Settle as the code. So it's www.slido.com and the code is MHHS Settle. And that's where you can both submit questions, but also look at the current questions that have been asked and upvote the ones that you think you'd most like to have asked in this session.
And if I'm looking at the right one, show that we're all joined up here, Amate, is it the one that has got 13 questions on?
Yes, that looks about right.
And the last question was submitted 21 hours ago.
Yes.
So, as I understand it with the design surgery, before we start, I suppose I should introduce myself. Hello, I am Justin Andrews, and I am joined very ably by the MHS PMO, but also my design colleague, Kevin Spencer, and hopefully between the two of us, we'll be able to answer your questions today. As I understand it, these sessions are basically, we're in your hands. You raise questions and we try our best to answer them. I think I would say, Amate, am I correct here that if we find that we can't answer the question in today's surgery, we will take it away and answer it offline, and we will post all the answers and questions where?
So yeah, they'll be on the website alongside the recordings.
Lovely. Right, Amate, should you remind me of anything before we start with the questions?
No, I think we're good to go.
Rock and roll. Now, I understand that a lot of these questions were raised a week ago and were answered at the surgery on Friday. Is that right, Kevin? Spencer?
Yeah, I think some of them were submitted for the settlements deep dive last Friday, but I pointed out that a lot of those questions related to the advanced segment and advanced processes. So we took them to the advanced deep dive on Friday afternoon. Matt's already answered, so there should be answers already coming out on those questions. But if there's anything new that wasn't part of that set and does relate to central settlement processes, then I think we should take those first.
Okay. And is it too early for us in the programme to have posted those answers and questions on the website? Can anybody within, say, the PMO confirm that?
I'll need to check. I think they're still working through them.
Right. So, based on that, then I think the first question that we will answer again, because it's settlement related, is that question which says, can you confirm that the absence of load shapes at an II run means that the II run is only for LSS and not MDS, or are best estimates still expected at II without a load shape?
So I picked that up, Justin. So if you look at the operational choreography, there is both an LSS run and an MDS run for the II run. The load shapes will be calculated ahead of the MDS run and then be used for defaulting in the II run. It is unlikely that those load shapes going out will be returned with the best estimate by the II run. They may be one or two metering systems potentially that could turn it around that quick.
I thought, I'm hoping this is okay. I thought I would show the Slido questions so you can actually see them, and which you might already have your Slido open on your screen, but I thought this might help you as well, is if we actually see the questions that we're answering. Now, the next question, Kevin, that I think that is relevant to settlement is this about the relationship between market participant ID and the DIP ID, and the DIP ID does not appear to be in an ISD item. Kevin.
Yeah, so this is an ongoing piece of work. If you look in the ISD entity forms, it is called out at the end of that document. Ongoing discussion as to how DIP routing, DIP roles, DIP market participants and DIP roles are identified. That's ongoing work, but there will ultimately be a mapping to market participant IDs for use on the DTN. There's still a discussion around what the market role definitions will be for new services.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I think the next question, Kevin, is worth covering again about LLF ID and DUOS tariff ID, and why we've got those two different IDs under market-wide half-hourly assessment, and therefore how it pertains to the data services.
Okay, so LLF ID is now the identifier that identifies the set of line loss factors that will be applied in central settlements. And the DUOS tariff ID is the rebanded LLFC ID. Now, I think what's being called out here is why is this data being sent to data services on the IF33? And I think that is just because it is included in registration data and is there for completeness. There are no processes that the data service will actually need that information for.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I think the next settlement relevant question is this one, which I think we had at the original, I can't remember which one it was, Kevin, whether it was the meter to bank or the settlement end-to-end playback session that we did about this higher value maximum permissible to be flagged rather than rejected. Now,
yeah, I think there's still it does say decision there. I think there's still a decision to be made whether we give flexibility to data services to let values through that are higher than the maximum permissible limit where they genuinely believe them to be correct, or whether we insist that they be estimated. But I would say that decision still needs to be nailed down.
Yes, and I think for complete clarity there, currently the validation that exists within the load shaping service and the market-wide data service within Elexon Central Systems does include a check for, is the energy data coming through for an MPAN above a maximum permissible value, and it does currently reject it if it is over that. So there is an interrelated, or there's not only the validation that might need to change for the data service, but if we do go down this route of flagging rather than sort of rejection, then there would be a subsequent change needed within the Elexon Central Systems.
The only thing I'd like to add to that, Justin, is that the value that's going to be because it's, Elexon Central Systems on ingestion will not know the code of practice that the data's being submitted against. So it will be set to a very, very high value and only trap really, really excessively large values, whereas the values for the data services are by code of practice and are more tailored, and all the data services should have already done that check before submitting the data. So it's only really to trap high erroneous values.
Yes, like the historic one that everybody quotes is that someone's put the MPAN number in instead of the actual meter reading. Yeah. Which might not be possible because we've got half-hourly values coming through from data services. So, are there any further questions? I can't see any further on my screen, but that might be because I've not pressed the right button. Amate, are there any?
No, I think those are all the questions we've got so far.
Right. Now, if there are no further questions, this might be a very short session. Are there any other questions people would like to raise at this surgery? The time is yours. The opportunity for you to raise any questions or queries, or if you would like us to do a deep dive on a certain element of a settlement process, we're more than happy to do that.
There's certainly some things I'd like to talk about, if that's possible.
Right, who is that?
This is Reese here. So we've got a couple of, I guess there's a couple of things on my mind. One is the standard settlement configurations. I know we've asked this question now a couple of times, and I think the last I heard was this was going to be handed over to REC as a thing for REC to solve, but we use the standard settlement configurations to derive tariffs for non-half hourly advanced meters, so time of use tariffs. And of course, with those going away in this design, that functionality is lost. So we need to pick a path on how we resolve that. I don't know, is there anything more that can be said about that at this point other than it's going to REC?
Yes, we can. So let's build this up then for you, everybody. So currently, the design shows that, say, within ISD, industry standing data, there will not be SSE's TPRs, but they will be in MDD, and they will be maintained within MD up to 5 years after the end of transition. Now, this issue has been raised at the Consequential Change Impact Assessment Group,
okay,
and they are currently discussing that. And I would say that in our what we should do here is provide you all the link to where the CCIAG documentation is, so you can see the slides and see the headlines and see what's being discussed. I'm trying to remember what the latest action is on that, because I wasn't at the last meeting, but I know that there is a extraordinary meeting of the CCIAG next Friday, as well as an ongoing regular meeting on the 22nd of September. Now, so that's one part of the picture. The other part of the picture is Kevin, the design team have been looking at certain use cases where perhaps SSC and TPR might be needed for economy 7, economy 10. Can you add a bit more colour to that, please?
Sorry, Justin, are you looking at me?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so last CCIAG, I think it was recognised that something needs potentially to replace it with some more textual, more granular information about sites, you know, because there'll be new things coming in like EVs and photovoltaics, and you might need to know more about site. And so I think the CCIAG was basically saying that the REC needs to take that way, but that certainly the backstop for currently is that we'll keep those SSCs in the MDD frozen for up to 5 years. Obviously, we can take a decision near that 5-year mark if something hasn't been put in place to replace it, that they may need to be retained further.
So I think the upshot is further work is being done, which will be communicated via the consequential change impact assessment group. And so I would say please attend that, or send me, because I chair the CCIAG, if you have any further queries on SSCs and TPRs.
Yeah, I think the only call out for me is if I could get Sam Carr invited to the next meeting, that would be really, really useful for now.
Okay, well, if Amate PMO take an action to, you know, invite, who did you say there, Reese?
It's Sam Carr.
Sam Carr,
C-A-R-R, yeah.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
So,
but you'll see all the information on the either the
yeah. collaboration
base or the Half Valley Settlement website. So, you know, I would look there.
Okay.
We do have a further question about further clarity on how half-hourly meter data will be communicated. Kevin Spencer?
So there is an interface, IF21, which will replace the existing half-hourly data flows. Some of those data flows may be kept for other purposes. You know, so 36, T275, 379 and 380. However, it is the IF21, which is for all 3 segments, the interface on which the half-hourly data will be flowed into settlement. Parties who are allowed to have that data can subscribe to receive that directly. But out of the back end of the settlement run, there will be reporting which will provide aggregated views of that half-hourly data.
Are there any other topics that anyone would like to raise? I'm quite happy to have people raise it via. Yeah,
Justin, there was, and I think I can see Dave's got his hand up, so I don't know whether Dave you want to ask it, but there was a question that came in advance, which I've posted in our internal chat.
okay.
Dave, would you like me to go for it, or do you want to ask?
Go for it.
Yeah, so I can go through it. It's a long statement followed by a question. I did send it in advance and posted it on the Slido. The longer version I sent via an email to Kevin. I don't know whether you received that, Kevin.
Yeah, I've just read it. Do you want to give the gist of it? I'll just give a statement up front. So the nature of this question relates to estimate a question that we've already covered off about not having best estimates for customers by the II run, and the fact that the II run's used to credit cover. And I think the suggestion is that the credit calculation could be less accurate. Would you like to state that more completely, David?
Yeah, so as the LSS run will be the day before the II MDS run, and if there's no smart actuals that the data service has entered into that run, then the LLS has to use, sorry, the MDS has to use estimates, which could be problematic for the creation of credit cover, especially if you have lots of smaller sites, which means that if you are a supplier that has more smaller sites than larger sites, then you would be adversely impacted by the proximity of those two runs. So my question was, had you considered the tightness in terms of settlement choreography being a risk to accurate settlement and credit cover?
So I think the first point is that the II run will use all the actual data that it's got. So you're only going to have that load shape defaulting for trad sites or sites where you've not been able to collect the actual half hourly data. So you know that should reduce the risk of over the current credit code calculation. Also, because of the contraction of the settlement timetable, the amount of credit cover that a party is likely to need will be calculated over a shorter period. So correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, currently it covers about 29 days. So the shortening of the timetable will actually reduce the amount of credit that parties have got to lodge.
Yeah, if you look at it very simplistically, dealing it in working days, the current SF, or the first financial settlement run is 16 working days, and we're bringing it down to around about, if you're doing the SAA and FAA, probably sort of 8 or 9 working days, because we're talking VAS at 7 working days. You're roughly halving your credit cover that you need to provide. So especially in the way that, well, it might be too late for, well, it will be a number of years down the line before that goes live. I was going to talk about the way that CAP is going at the moment, the credit assessment price, but who knows what it'd be like in, say, 3-5 years time, whatever. But yeah, the upshot is your credit cover will be reduced by the settlement timetable reduction, and what Kevin has said. David, did that go some way to answer your question?
So it has been considered. I think that answers that part of it. I think that currently that we use the EAC if there's no anything available. That wasn't going to be replaced, but now is by annualized consumption. I wonder whether there's an opportunity to use that.
What, to make the credit cover calculation even?
You would still have to profile it in some way, though, David, wouldn't you? Because you need to know what the daily bit of that annual consumption is. But like I say, it's only for those trad sites and non-communicating smart. So everything should be more accurate. The calculation should be more accurate because it's based on real data for the majority.
Okay, thank you.
I see another question has popped up while we were covering that about the D-flow interface doc shows that exception flows, the D95, the D235, etc., are to be replaced by market-wide half-hourly settlement, but the interface is not applicable. How will issues be identified?
So, I mean, the D95 is a very non-half-hourly data flow, isn't it? you know,
Is it
says
run
there's-
largely AKAs? Is that what it is?
No, it's run by HHDAs ahead of the settlement runs to give suppliers time to correct their half-hourly non-half-hourly data, and it flags up issues with appointments and things like that. So that clearly is going to go. Likewise, the 235 is a half-hourly data flow, but we've no longer got HHDA, so that's going to go. But what we are going to have in central settlements is exception reports, and those exception reports will be sent out on a couple of occasions, and can go to the suppliers and the data services. So there are a number of checks that will be done, which we already alluded to on ingestion, and you can see what those are in both the LSS and MDS method statements. Then further exceptions when we actually start to process the data in the say MDS run. So you might have instances where you have actual data on a de-energized site that will generate an exception. You will have missing data where a default has need to been applied. That will produce an exception, and that new exception report will go out. There's an IF 13 and an IF 14, I believe, are the two that are going to replace those.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Are there any, and Kevin, is there any reports from the data services back to either the supplier or the registration if there's sort of like any mismatches in registration or supplier data?
I don't believe there are, and I think this is something we raised with this level 4 subgroup about what additional reporting might be required by the smart data services, and nothing has been identified.
Okay, thank you. Right, any further questions either via Slido, or if people would like to speak, please feel free to do so.
When do we start talking about the transition?
Transition requirements. Okay, so Reese, the answer to that is the design team are currently planning the transition work, and the transition requirement work is due to start after the baseline of the design in November. I know that the design team are planning that work, and actually I know that they've started drafting some transition requirements. So that plan or an update will be provided to the design advisory group meeting on whenever they're meeting, early November, early October. I should know the next design advisory group meeting because I chair it. And I'm trying to remember when it is, just bear with me. So an update should be provided on the 12th of October. That was it.
Okay, so that's useful. Thank you.
Okay. Any more for any more? Okay, well, I will draw this to a conclusion, the surgery today. Let me just do one last check to see if any last minute questions have come through. None. So I thank you for your time today. And as always, if you do have any questions that come through on the review of the design artifacts that I know you're furiously doing over the coming weeks, and hopefully giving you back a bit of extra time back today to continue that review, then please contact the half-hourly settlement programme either directly to the PMO, or there's the MHHS Design MHS, or was it called? There's our website, but sorry, our email address. So please do that. And thank you very much for today, and speak to you all soon.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Justin.
Cheers, bye.